Welcome to PL Together Lounge Talks. I'm Adam Geller, founder and CEO of Athena Professional Learning Platform. We are talking with Amy Tepper and Patrick Flynn of Tepper and Flynn. They're an organization that works with schools and districts across the country. They're also authors of multiple books, and we've been talking about feedback and professional learning. And thanks so much for joining us again to wrap up the conversation and talk, really end this question of professional learning and what that looks like right now.
Thanks, Adam.
So I think, there's a challenge that's underway. Well, there's many challenges, but as a school leader or a system leader, there's a real tension, which is like the sense of overwhelm that everyone is experiencing for adapting to the moment. And then simultaneously, the need to kind of prepare and be skilled for whatever comes next. And so for me, I think of that as, professional learning, but, let's just talk to the superintendents out there for, 1 second. Like, if you were to make the kind of big picture go, no go kind of advice, like, should I be sitting? I mean, this is a leading question, of course. Should I be sitting in place? Should I tell everybody it's okay, like get back to being comfortable? Or should I be pushing and saying, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but we have to keep learning?
Our greatest growth happens when we're uncomfortable. So I think that's the start point to really answering that question. But when we answer that in a very practical way, we're 6 weeks into, in most cases, about 6 weeks into this change and this shift. And people are moving along the stages, and we have varying levels of application. So now is the time to begin to ask the question of, what is working inside these virtual environments, specifically setting up the opportunities for that collaboration to occur around that topic. And then asking the question, how do you know it's working? And then can it be replicated? And then if so, how can it be replicated? Because that's where we can then build and scaffold the professional learning for our entire school system and or organization.
But, what do you say to someone who kind of pushes back? I mean, that sounds great. That sounds, thanks so much, Patrick. That sounds like language of someone who is not standing in the building while it's on fire. I only can spend my time on so many things. Why is professional learning? Why do I need to carve out time and call it professional learning? Like, aren't we all learning all the time? So, Patrick or Amy, you can kind of respond to that, but kind of talk me off the edge of the cliff here.
We always have to acknowledge that, people can at any point in time shift backwards, so to speak, into a moment of crisis or a feeling of crisis and a feeling of trauma. And so there's no disrespect, given to that particular aspect. But at the same time, ultimately our goal is to ensure that learning is occurring. And if these environments are going to continue to be a part of our lives, which, it's leaning more and more towards that idea, then we do have to be, in that evidence collection stage, that information gathering, that data gathering stage. And that should provide us with a little bit of a safety net, so to speak, to answering the question of, I'm not asking you to do anything more than let's just get on paper what's working, because those are the things that we're going to be able to utilize in the future that's going to be able to support our kids in a different way.
Let me ask it from a practical sense, Amy. I don't know the extent to which school leaders are really feeling worried about the compliance hammer this year, but should I be counting time that people document what is working as quote unquote professional learning?
It's a good question. At the end of the day, it's about the culture. Patrick's line, what was it, Patrick? The culture you had is the culture you have now. that, you said something, we love Brene Brown, and where she's promoting the idea that discomfort is normalized. So before this ever happened, had we promoted an idea that Patrick said, we grow when we're uncomfortable, where that happy place is. So for some, they're already in that place. But for the others, we want to get to a place where we create a space where we are always growing. It's not about the number of hours, and it's the number of videos that you watch. Is how are we continually improving and growing? And this is such a rare opportunity in crisis. Our first blog that we wrote coming into this, who was it who discovered, the apple falling? Newton. Was during the bubonic plague, right? So if we need to go all the way back and say, yes, but Newton discovered the laws of gravity during the plague, if we need to go to that and say, why does learning have to stop when we know in great times of challenge and crisis, we come out on the other side just exponentially new people?
I like the kind of, in some ways, controversial push you just gave, which is, no, it's good. I like it because you kind of pointed out, look, I was trying to get either of you to give me some, black and white answer. Okay, I didn't get it. But what I heard here is, I'll put on the school leader hat. If I was a school leader listening to that, yes, professional learning is still important. What I quote unquote count as professional learning right now is still important, but I have to simultaneously consider, like, what was the way that I empowered people to drive that learning before? Maybe they weren't empowered. And in some respects, I think the other thing that you said, which is take this moment as the opportunity where we have to do a lot of hard work, but we don't have to do the careful work that you usually have to do of quote unquote change management. Because there's nothing to manage here from the stance that everybody's here, right? Like nobody's sticking behind on the before. Everybody is in this moment together, and there's no getting around it. And so as a result, how are you kind of constructing that set of guidelines for what professional learning means, why we do it, why it's important, how we think about what we define as valuable professional learning. And in some ways, it sounds like we have an opportunity to really connect, maybe more so than ever for teachers, the line between quote unquote what we're asking them to learn about and the relevance to their day-to-day. So I don't know. That's what I took from that. I don't know. Hopefully that's what you wanted me to take from that. That's what I just.
You're excellent at paraphrasing.
I would add an extra layer. I would add an extra layer to all of that to really kind of highlight the idea that, while we're all in this same place, what I've seen with the waiving of some of the compliance requirements, right, it has been an increase in risk taking, and I think that increase in risk taking as well has been because we're all in the same place. We're just trying things and trying to accomplish whatever we can. So I think as risk taking starts to kind of become more normalized, I think for a lot of people, it can allow us the opportunity to kind of create the safe environment to say, okay, well, based on that risk that you just took, did it work? Why did it work? Because now we're at a point where, in a new system like this, we're now need to really think about institutional learning and what does this mean to us as an institution so that we can continue to move forward for our kids. And if we can frame from that lens of a collaborative kind of moral obligation to each other, that's why we need to be doing professional learning. That's why we need to be having these conversations, because we have an obligation to continue to make sure learning is going to occur. And we can create the structures for that through our discussions and through our PL.
And we talked in our last conversation about the idea of urgency, and Patrick mentioned, replicating. So it feels, we are recording this particular conversation toward the end of the academic year. So in some senses, there is some urgency to start acting now and talking about what is it that's working, what risks are paying off, all those types of things, so that no matter where we end up next fall, we can replicate those things.
No time like the moment. Right? When you're in it, you're gonna know it. If I wait till the summer, and what's gonna happen is the moment that those folks stop or school ends, uh, I don't blame them. Mentally, they need to disappear. Right? They need to disconnect in order for them to be successful. So I think right now is the time to be collecting and gathering that information.
And if I can add just one really important point, Patrick did mention earlier, um, I think that clearly we are growth minded and promote that and a culture of learning in every building, but it comes back to what we talked about very early in our conversations about understanding your teachers and where they are. We know they're exhausted. We know, I'm hearing how many hours a day in front of a computer they're spending that they had never done, just a number of hours in a chair in front of a computer, and then on a lunch break checking on their 3 children in homeschool, in home. So I think it's going to be really important to still maintain high expectations, still keep some momentum going so that we are really informed and making good decisions in the summer for the fall, but have a balance of understanding of where everybody is and what everyone can really handle.
Yeah, I think you hit on something really important there, which is many teachers are also parents, which means they're also struggling with wait a second, my kids are at home all day and is supposed to be learning. I have a whole job that I'm supposed to be doing.
One of our coaches tweeted a picture of her 2 children who had a fire drill and they were outside yesterday.
Wow.
It's types of things that just keep you really grounded for what people are experiencing.
A fire drill.
Very creative elementary school.
Normalcy. Well, that's right. Practice those routines. Well, we're about to wrap up. And before we go, I want to ask you an extra credit question. We're going to go to Amy first. So what's something new that you've changed or adopted or started valuing since we started sheltering in place and being at home a little bit more?
So I think with everybody, it's been a shocking experience. We've all gone through so many waves of everything. I think for me, the most shocking, but then which has turned into be the most important is I've been calling it like a stillness, because we wrote 2 books in a very short amount of time. We're out just like hitting the pavement. It's so important for us to be in buildings. So we filled every minute of every day just doing. And I think one of the most important things that's happened for me is to get back to a stillness. It's energized me, which I didn't expect, and creatively and intellectually and emotionally and all of those things. So that's been like, I've dug, someone else has asked that, those have come up more recently. And I've been thinking about, that's been the biggest one, aside from learning how to green screen, which has been without the green screen. So two big wins.
I agree. I have never been more well rested in the last decade than I am right now.
I have the luxury of, I don't have, I feel a level of guilt that I'm not experiencing what everyone else is in a lot of regard.
Patrick, how about you? Same question.
Out of all of this, my son is a senior in high school. So his experience, of course, very unique. And this is a very difficult time, I think, for any kid who's graduating, just based on what they know to be a real loss. But for him, he's also projecting forward and looking forward to college, and kind of has seen the next layer of his life. And hopefully that will come to fruition without any glitches as well. But I would say what I value most out of this has been my time with him. It just dramatically changed the way in which we interacted and the time that we committed to one another, and just being with one another and talking with one another and processing what it is to be a senior getting ready to leave, to being a future college soccer player, and academic, and just what it really all means. It's just a completely different opportunity that I think been graced with based on this.
Well, great to hear. There are some personal bright spots for both of you. Amy, Patrick, thanks again for joining us as part of this series. If you're interested to learn more about their work, head to tepperandflynn.com. They've got multiple books out. One that we talked about a bunch in this conversation is Feedback to Feed Forward. They also have a new book out. Remind me again of the title of the most recent book.
Learner-focused feedback.
Learner-focused feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. So Amy, Patrick, thanks so much for being part of PL Together. And if you're listening to this or watching this and you want to see more conversations, head to pltogether.org. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.